A black scholarship girl walked into a rich culinary academy with one worn-out ingredient box, and the bullies thought dinner was served. They dumped her final cooking exam straight into the trash, laughed in her face, and called her food garbage. Cute mistake. Because the girl they tried to humiliate wasn't just another student, she was the national master chef they never saw coming. And when the judges tasted what she created from scraps in just 15 minutes, the entire kitchen went silent. The final exam day at Westbridge Culinary Academy was supposed to be a celebration of talent, discipline, and years of hard work. Instead, for Ariel Carter, it became the beginning of something far darker. The massive competition kitchen was already buzzing when Ariel stepped through the doors that morning. Stainless steel counters reflected the bright overhead lights. Dozens of students hurried between workstations carrying expensive knife sets, imported ingredients, and custom chef equipment. The air smelled of herbs, butter, garlic, and nervous anticipation. Every student knew that today's practical exam could determine their future. A high score could open doors to elite culinary internships. A poor performance could destroy years of effort. Ariel quietly made her way toward her assigned station, carrying a worn ingredient box that looked painfully out of place among the luxury equipment surrounding her. Her chef jacket was spotless but simple. Unlike many of her classmates, she didn't own a personalized knife collection worth thousands of dollars. She didn't have wealthy parents funding her culinary dreams. She was at Westbridge on a scholarship, and everyone knew it. Unfortunately, one person enjoyed reminding her of that fact more than anyone else. Look who's here. A mocking voice called across the kitchen. Several students immediately turned toward Dylan Whitmore. Dylan leaned casually against a stainless steel counter, wearing an expensive chef coat embroidered with his family crest. A confident grin spread across his face as he looked Ariel up and down. The scholarship girl actually made it to the final exam, he said loudly. I was starting to think she got lost on her way to a community college. Laughter erupted from a few nearby students. Ariel didn't respond. That only seemed to encourage him. You know, Dylan continued, taking a step closer. This kitchen is usually reserved for future chefs, not charity cases. More laughter. Standing beside him, Brianna Cole lifted her phone and began recording. Her camera focused directly on Ariel's face. Oh, this is definitely going in the group chat, Brianna said with a smirk. Everyone loves an underdog story. Marcus Vale joined them a moment later. Unlike Dylan, Marcus preferred physical intimidation. As Ariel tried to move past him toward her station, he deliberately stepped into her path. The collision looked accidental. It wasn't. Ariel's ingredient box slipped from her hands. Several vegetables rolled across the floor. A container of fresh herbs burst open. A few students gasped. Marcus raised his hands innocently. Oops. Dylan laughed. Brianna kept recording. For a brief moment, the entire kitchen watched to see how Ariel would react. Would she yell? Would she cry? Would she finally lose control? Instead, Ariel slowly crouched down and began collecting the ingredients one by one. She didn't say a word. She didn't even look at them. The silence seemed to frustrate Dylan more than any argument ever could. At that moment, Chef Roland Pierce walked into the area. As the instructor overseeing the final examination, his word carried enormous authority. He glanced toward the scattered ingredients. He saw Marcus. He saw Dylan. He saw Brianna holding a camera. Then he looked directly at Ariel. Miss Carter, he said sternly, let's try not to create disruptions on exam day. Ariel stared at him. For a second, she almost thought she had misunderstood. Marcus had caused the incident. Dylan had mocked her. Brianna had recorded everything. Yet somehow she was the one being warned. Yes, Chef, she answered quietly. Chef Roland nodded and walked away. Not a single word was directed at Dylan or his friends. The message was clear. Everyone in the kitchen understood it. Some students were protected. Others were not. As the exam officially began, students rushed into preparation mode. Knives flashed across cutting boards. Burners ignited, pans heated. The room filled with the sounds of chopping, sizzling, and shouted instructions. Ariel calmly unpacked her ingredients. Then she picked up her knife, and everything changed. At first, nobody noticed. But one student at the neighboring station slowed down. Then another. Then another. Within minutes, several students found themselves staring. Ariel's knife work was extraordinary. Not fast in a reckless way. Fast in a controlled way. Every cut was identical. Every movement was precise. Vegetables transformed into perfect shapes within seconds. Her workstation remained spotless. Her timing was flawless. While other students rushed frantically to stay on schedule, Ariel moved with complete confidence. She never wasted emotion, never hesitated, never panicked. The kitchen seemed to disappear around her. For the first time that morning, the whispers started changing. Did you see that? She's good. No? She's really good. Even students who disliked her couldn't deny what they were seeing. Dylan noticed the shift immediately. His smile faded. At first, he told himself it didn't matter. Then he watched Ariel break down ingredients with techniques that many second-year students couldn't execute properly. His confidence began to crack. A few minutes later, one of the assistant instructors paused near Ariel's station and silently watched her work for nearly 30 seconds before moving on. That had never happened before. Not for Dylan. Not for anyone. For the first time all morning, he felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Because this wasn't the nervous scholarship student he expected. This wasn't someone barely surviving at Westbridge. This was someone who looked completely at home in a professional kitchen. Someone dangerous. Someone capable of winning. Dylan stared at the dish, slowly, taking shape on Ariel's station. The irritation in his eyes hardened into something colder. Beside him, Brianna lowered her phone. "What are you thinking?" she asked quietly. Dylan kept watching Ariel. Then he leaned closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "If she wins today," he said, "all of us become a joke." Across the kitchen, Ariel continued working, completely unaware that she had just become the target of something far worse than school bullying. Because from that moment forward, the final exam was no longer a culinary competition. It had become a plan to destroy her in front of the entire academy. Ariel Carter did not cook like someone trying to survive a final exam. She cooked like someone who had already survived something much worse. The heat in the main kitchen rose quickly as burners roared to life across the room. Pans hissed. Oil shimmered beneath the bright lights. Around her, students rushed through their recipes with tight faces and trembling hands, terrified of burning a sauce, overcooking a protein, or missing the deadline by even a few seconds. But Ariel moved differently. At her station, everything had a purpose. Her cutting board was clean. Her ingredients were arranged in perfect order. The chicken rested at the exact temperature she wanted. Her herbs were chopped fine but not bruised. Her vegetables had been shaped evenly, ready to glaze in butter. Beside them sat potatoes steaming gently, waiting to become a smooth herb mash. Dylan Whitmore watched from across the kitchen, his jaw tightening. Ariel seasoned the chicken with calm precision, then placed it into the hot pan. The skin touched the steel with a sharp, confident sizzle. She did not flinch. She pressed it lightly, waited, then adjusted the heat before the pan could burn too fast. A few minutes later, the smell of browned butter, citrus, and herbs began to drift through the air. Even Chef Roland Pierce noticed. He had been walking between stations with a clipboard, offering short comments to students who needed correction. When he reached Ariel's table, he slowed down. His eyes moved over her workstation, then to the pan, then to the small saucepan, where she was beginning a French-style brown sauce. He said nothing, but he stayed longer than he had at any other station. That was enough to make Dylan's face harden. Ariel added a splash of stock to the pan, scraping the brown bits from the bottom with a movement so smooth, it looked rehearsed 1,000 times. The sauce darkened, deepened, and caught the scent of orange zest as she tilted the pan just enough to control the reduction. Near the back of the kitchen, an elderly assistant named Mr. Samuel Reed was carrying a tray of clean towels when he suddenly stopped. His eyes narrowed. He had seen that motion before. Not the recipe, not the dish. The technique? The way Ariel lifted the pan off the flame for half a second before returning it to the heat. The way she controlled the sauce without measuring. The way her wrist turned at the exact moment the liquid thickened. It was not something most students were taught. It was a competition habit, developed under pressure, used by chefs who had cooked with cameras in their faces and judges, waiting for failure. Samuel took one slow step closer. A memory rose in his mind. A national culinary competition years ago. A young black girl standing alone against older contestants. Using that same movement to save a sauce everyone thought was ruined. No, it couldn't be. That girl had vanished from the culinary world. Dylan saw Samuel watching Ariel, and something snapped inside him. It was bad enough that students were whispering. It was bad enough that Chef Roland had paused at her station. But now, even the old kitchen assistant was staring like Ariel was someone important. Dylan turned one of his burners higher than necessary. The flame jumped beneath his pan. Smoke began to rise, thick and sharp, drifting toward Ariel's station. A few students coughed. "Watch your station." "Dylan," someone muttered. Dylan only shrugged. The smoke rolled across Ariel's workspace, clouding the area around her sauce. Brianna lifted her phone immediately, recording Ariel through the haze. "Looks like someone's losing control," she whispered, smiling. Marcus moved next, pretending to reach for a towel. He bumped Ariel's table just hard enough to knock her clean cloth into a bowl of water on the floor. "Careful," he said with fake concern. "Wouldn't want you to mess up your big moment." For 1 second, Ariel's sauce bubbled too fast. Dylan smiled. This was the moment he wanted. One mistake, one burned sauce, one crack in her calm. But Ariel did not panic. She turned the flame down, lifted the saucepan, added a small cube of cold butter, and whisked once, twice, 3 times. The sauce tightened, smoothed, and came back to life. Then she strained it through a fine sieve, as if nothing had happened. Samuel's grip tightened around the towel tray. Now he was sure. This was not luck. This was mastery. Chef Roland looked at the sauce, then at Ariel. And for the first time that morning, uncertainty crossed his face. Dylan saw it. Brianna saw it. Marcus saw it too. Ariel Carter was not just doing well. She was becoming impossible to ignore. Samuel stepped back into the shadow near the pantry, his heart beating faster than it should have. He whispered to himself, barely loud enough to hear, "No, that's impossible." That girl was supposed to have disappeared from the culinary world. Before he could decide whether to warn the judges, Dylan stared at Ariel's nearly finished dish and made a colder decision. If smoke, insults, and sabotage could not break her, then he would destroy the dish itself. With only 12 minutes left on the clock, Ariel Carter was almost finished. Her chicken rested beautifully on the tray, the skin golden and crisp, the edges brushed with a light orange glaze that caught the kitchen lights. Beside it, her butter-glazed vegetables shone with color. The herb mashed potatoes were smooth, varm, and waiting for the final touch. All that remained was the sauce and plating. The entire rhythm of her station had changed. At the beginning of the exam, students had laughed at her worn ingredient box and simple tools. Now, several of them were stealing glances at her dish while pretending to focus on their own work. Even Chef Roland Pierce could no longer ignore her. He approached her table slowly, clipboard held against his chest. His face remained strict, but his eyes betrayed him. They moved from the sauce to the chicken, then to the clean arrangement of her station. He did not praise her. He did not smile. But for a few silent seconds, he looked genuinely surprised. Ariel noticed. So did Dylan. Across the kitchen, Dylan's expression darkened. His own dish was behind schedule. His sauce had separated once already, and one of his vegetables had burned on the edges. He had spent years believing Westbridge belonged to students like him. Students with money, reputation, and family names powerful enough to open any door. But now a scholarship girl with a second-hand knife was about to beat him. And not quietly. If Ariel's dish reached the judge's table, everyone would see it. Everyone would know. Dylan wiped his hands on a towel and looked toward Brianna. She was still holding her phone low, recording whenever she could. Marcus stood near the center aisle, watching Ariel with a mean smile. Dylan made his decision. He walked toward Ariel's station with the casual confidence of someone who had never truly feared consequences. "Hey," he said, forcing a fake smile. "Need a towel?" Ariel did not look up. "There are clean towels by your station," she said. Dylan stepped closer. "Relax. I'm just asking." Before Ariel could move, he reached across the table. His hand did not go for the towel. It went for the pot. The pot holding her finished chicken. Ariel's eyes widened. "Dylan, don't." He lifted it. For one breath, the entire kitchen seemed to freeze. Then Dylan turned and dumped the contents straight into the large sink beside them. The golden chicken slid into dirty water. The orange glaze broke apart. Bits of food waste floated around it. A soft splash echoed through the kitchen louder than any scream could have. No one moved. No one spoke. The final exam clock continued ticking. Ariel stood perfectly still, her hands trembling at her sides. Her dish, the one she had built through smoke, insults, and sabotage, was gone in seconds. Brianna rushed closer. Phone lifted directly toward Ariel's face. She wanted tears. She wanted rage. She wanted a breakdown. She could post mock and replay. Marcus burst out laughing. "Trash food belongs with the trash," he said. A few students looked away. Others stared in shock. One girl covered her mouth. Someone whispered Dylan's name. But no one stepped forward. Ariel slowly looked down into the sink. The chicken floated in ruined water. Then she looked back at Dylan. Her eyes were wet. But she did not cry. That somehow made Dylan angrier. What he said loudly, throwing up his hands. "You left it in the way." Chef Roland rushed toward them, his face sharp with irritation. "What is going on here?" he demanded. Ariel opened her mouth, but Dylan spoke first. She shoved the pot toward me. Dylan said, suddenly sounding offended, "I was trying to get a towel. It slipped. Maybe if she wasn't taking over the whole aisle, this wouldn't have happened." "That's not true," Ariel said. Brianna lowered her phone just enough to hide the angle she had filmed. Marcus nodded quickly. "I saw it." She put the pot right in his path. The injustice landed harder than the sabotage itself. Chef Roland looked at the sink, then at Dylan, then at Ariel. The truth was obvious. Anyone with eyes could see the pot had not simply slipped. But Dylan Whitmore was not just a student. He was the son of one of Westbridge's most powerful donors. And Ariel was only the scholarship girl. Chef Roland's jaw tightened. "Miss Carter," he said coldly, "this is a serious disruption during a final exam." Ariel stared at him. "My food was destroyed, and I am asking why there was chaos at your station." He snapped. The room went silent again. Dylan lowered his head slightly, hiding a smile. Ariel felt every eye on her. The ruined food, the ticking clock, the phone in Brianna's hand. The instructor who had watched everything twist into her fault, Chef Roland took one step closer and raised his voice for the entire kitchen to hear. Ariel Carter, you may be removed from this exam for lack of control and unsafe conduct. A whisper moved through the students like a cold draft. Ariel did not move. Dylan had destroyed her dish. Now the school was preparing to punish her for it. But Dylan was not finished. Ruining the food had only been the first step. Next, he would try to ruin her place at Westbridge forever. The small office beside the competition kitchen felt colder than the kitchen had ever been. Ariel stood near the wall, still wearing the same chef jacket, stained with a few drops of sauce from the dish Dylan had destroyed. Her hands were folded in front of her, but her fingers were tight. Across from her, Dylan sat in one of the chairs as if he were the victim. Marcus leaned against the cabinet with his arms crossed, and Brianna stood beside Chef Roland Pierce, holding her phone like it was evidence in a courtroom. Chef Roland's face was hard. "Show me the video," he said. Brianna nodded quickly, already prepared. She tapped the screen twice and turned it toward him. The video began after the worst part had already happened. It showed Ariel standing near the sink. The ruined food floated in the dirty water. Dylan stepped backward with his hands raised, looking startled. Ariel's face was tense, her eyes fixed on him. There was no footage of Dylan reaching for the pot, no footage of him lifting it, no footage of him dumping it into the sink on purpose. Brianna had cut it perfectly. Chef Roland watched the short clip once. Then again, Dylan sighed dramatically. "I didn't want to make this a big deal," he said, lowering his voice just enough to sound wounded. But she was losing. Everyone could see it. Her station was a mess, and she panicked. Ariel turned toward him. "That is not true." Dylan continued as if she had not spoken. "She destroyed her own dish because she knew she couldn't win. Then she tried to blame me so she could get another chance." "That's a lie," Ariel said. Marcus shook his head. "I saw her push the pot toward him." Ariel looked at Marcus in disbelief. "You were laughing." "I was nervous," Marcus replied. "People laugh when they're nervous," Brianna added softly. Ariel was acting really aggressive. "I only recorded because I felt unsafe." The word unsafe hung in the air like a weapon. Chef Roland turned slowly toward Ariel. Before he could speak, the office door opened. Principal Margaret Voss entered with sharp steps and an even sharper expression. She was a tall woman in a tailored suit, the kind of person who made decisions before hearing explanations. Her eyes moved first to Dylan. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Ariel's chest tightened. Not what happened. Not who destroyed the dish. Not why was a student being accused without full evidence. "Are you hurt?" Dylan shook his head. "Playing the role perfectly." "No. Principal Voss. Just shaken." Principal Voss looked relieved. Only then did she glance at Ariel. "Miss Carter," she said. "This is extremely disappointing." Ariel felt something inside her sink. "You haven't even asked me what happened." Principal Voss lifted one eyebrow. "I've seen enough to understand that there was a serious disturbance during a final examination. You saw an edited video." Brianna gasped as if offended. Chef Roland stepped forward. "Careful. Miss Carter, accusing another student without proof will only make this worse." Ariel looked around the office. Every face seemed already decided. Dylan's family name had filled the room before she ever had a chance to defend herself. "I had proof," Ariel said quietly. "My dish was there." He picked it up. He dumped it. Dylan leaned forward. "Why would I do that? I was ahead of you." Ariel did not answer immediately, because everyone in that room knew he wasn't. Principal Voss folded her hands on the desk. "This academy has a reputation," she said. "A reputation built on discipline, excellence, and trust. We cannot allow emotional behavior from scholarship students to disrupt official examinations." Scholarship students. There it was. Not students. "No, chef," Scholarship students. Chef Roland placed a printed form on the desk and pushed it toward Ariel. "This is an incident acknowledgement," he said. "You will sign it. Accept responsibility for unsafe conduct. And the exam board will decide whether you may retake the practical portion under supervision." Ariel stared at the paper. The words blurred for a moment. Unsafe conduct. Disruption. Failure to maintain control. None of it said Dylan destroyed her food. None of it said Brianna recorded a clipped video. None of it said Marcus lied. If she signed it, the story became official. If she signed it, Dylan won. "I'm not signing this," Ariel said. Principal Voss's expression hardened. "Then your scholarship will be frozen pending disciplinary review." The room went silent. Even Dylan stopped smiling for half a second. Ariel looked down at the pen on the desk. Her scholarship was the only reason she was at Westbridge. Without it, tuition alone could force her out before the semester ended. Her mother had already sacrificed too much. Her family had already lost too much. One signature could keep her in school, but it would also bury the truth. She reached for the pen. Brianna lifted her phone slightly, ready to capture the moment Ariel surrendered. Dylan's smile returned. Ariel picked up the pen, held it over the paper, and stared at the line where her name was supposed to go. Then she placed the pen back down, slowly, deliberately. She looked Principal Voss directly in the eyes. "I won't sign a lie." No one spoke. The silence in the office became heavier than the heat of the kitchen. But Ariel's refusal did not make the powerful people reconsider. It made them decide to crush her harder. Ariel Carter was escorted out of the office before the final exam had even ended. No one touched her. But the message was clear. She was no longer being treated like a student. She was being treated like a problem. Westbridge wanted to remove quietly. Behind her, the kitchen continued to move. Pans still sizzling. Timer still ringing. Students still rushing to finish their dishes as if her entire future had not just been placed on a piece of paper she refused to sign. The hallway behind the competition kitchen was narrow and cold. It smelled faintly of steel, bleach, and stored vegetables from the walk-in cooler nearby. Ariel stopped near the double doors, her chest tight, her mind moving faster than she could control. Her dish was gone. Her exam was suspended. Her scholarship was being threatened. And the people who had done it were still inside, protected by smiles, money, and a phone full of lies. She pressed her hands against the edge of a metal prep table and forced herself to breathe. Then a quiet voice came from behind her. "Are you Donovan Carter's daughter?" Ariel turned sharply. "Mr. Samuel Reed stood a few feet away, still holding the tray of folded kitchen towels from earlier. His face was serious, but not cruel. Unlike everyone else that morning, he was not looking at her like she had caused trouble. He was looking at her like he had found a memory he was never supposed to see again. Ariel's expression changed before she could hide it. That name always did that to her. Donovan Carter. To most of the culinary world, he was once a legend. A chef who could turn simple ingredients into unforgettable meals. A man respected by judges, feared by rivals, and loved by young cooks who believed talent could come from anywhere. Then came the scandal. En accusation, a ruined competition, a reputation destroyed overnight. After that, Donovan disappeared from television, from restaurants, from interviews, from everything. And Ariel learned early that carrying his name could open doors, but it could also invite knives. "My father has nothing to do with this," she said carefully. Samuel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I didn't ask because of him. I asked because of you." Ariel said nothing. "I was there." Samuel continued. "At the National Youth Championship, 4 years ago, I was working prep behind the stage when a 14-year-old girl saved a broken sauce with one turn of her wrist." Ariel looked away. Samuel's eyes softened. "You won that day." "I used my mother's last name." Ariel whispered. "I know. The silence between them carried more truth than the entire office meeting had. Ariel had hidden that part of herself for a reason. She did not want people saying she won because of Donovan Carter. She did not want judges expecting greatness before she touched a knife. And she certainly did not want enemies from her father's past looking at her like unfinished business. Samuel glanced toward the kitchen doors. "Listen to me," he said. "Brianna's video is not the only footage." Ariel looked back at him. "What do you mean?" "There's an old safety camera above the sink area. Most people don't know about it. It was installed years ago after a grease fire, before the school upgraded the main system. It doesn't run through the same dashboard Chef Roland uses." Ariel's breath caught. "You think it recorded Dylan? If it was still running," Samuel said, "it may have recorded everything." For the first time since Dylan dumped her food, Ariel felt something close to hope. Not victory. Not yet. But a thin, dangerous thread of possibility. "Where's it stored?" she asked. Samuel looked toward the end of the hallway, where the old storage room sat beyond the walk-in cooler. "In the back office. There's a separate drive. We need to get there before someone else figures it out." He turned to lead her down the hall. But they were not alone. At the far end of the corridor, half hidden near the corner, Marcus Vale stood motionless. He had not heard everything, but he had heard enough. Ariel saw him at the same moment Samuel did. Marcus's face shifted from confusion to realization. Then he stepped backward. "Marcus," Ariel said. He turned and walked away fast, pulling his phone from his pocket. Samuel cursed under his breath. Within seconds, Marcus was already typing. His message went straight to Dylan. "She's not normal." Old man recognized her. "And there might be another camera?" Marcus hit send. The bullying in the kitchen had just become something far more dangerous. Now it was a race for the truth. When Ariel Carter walked back into the competition kitchen, every sound seemed to drop lower. The students who had been chopping, stirring, and plating turned one by one. Some looked curious. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked away immediately, as if watching her would force them to admit what had really happened. The ruined dish was gone from the sink now. But everyone remembered the splash. Everyone remembered Dylan's laughter. Everyone remembered Chef Roland blaming the girl whose food had been destroyed. Dylan stood near his station with his arms crossed, smiling, like the entire room belonged to him. Brianna was beside him, her phone still in her hand. Marcus lingered near the back of the kitchen, breathing a little too quickly after the message he had just sent. His eyes flicked from Ariel to Dylan, then toward the hallway behind the kitchen. Chef Roland Pierce stepped forward before Ariel could reach her station. "Miss Carter," he said sharply, "you were instructed to remain outside until the exam board made a decision." Ariel stopped in the center of the room. "I'm asking to finish my exam," a few students whispered. Chef Roland let out a short, humorless laugh. "Finish what?" he asked. "You have no completed dish. Almost no time. And at this point, no guaranteed right to continue." Dylan laughed loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She wants to cook air now," he said. "Maybe she can plate disappointment." A couple of students snickered, but not as many as before. The mood in the kitchen had shifted. People had seen enough to know something was wrong, even if they were too afraid to say it. Ariel looked at the clock. 15 minutes remained. Not enough time to start over. Not enough time for a normal student to create a serious dish. But Ariel was not asking for normal. "I'm not asking to restart the exam," she said. "I'm asking for the remaining time. 15 minutes. I'll use only what is left at my station." The kitchen fell quiet. Even Dylan's smile paused. Chef Roland stared at her as if she had just said something ridiculous. 15 minutes, he repeated, "to produce a final exam dish. Yes, that is impossible." Ariel did not blink. Then there should be no reason to refuse. The words landed hard. Several students exchanged looks. One of them whispered, "She has a point." Principal Margaret Voss stepped in from the side entrance. her expression already cold. "This is not a negotiation," she said. "The integrity of the exam must be protected." Samuel Reed, standing near the service counter, suddenly spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "With respect, Principal Voss, the written exam guidelines allow a student to use remaining time and remaining ingredients as long as the final clock has not expired." Chef Roland's head snapped toward him. Samuel kept his voice calm. "There is no rule requiring disqualification before review. Not if the dish can still be completed." A ripple moved through the room. Principal Voss looked furious. But she knew too many students had heard it. If she refused now, the favoritism would become impossible to hide. Chef Roland's face tightened as he realized the same thing. Dylan leaned toward Brianna and muttered, "Go. Find that camera before the old man does." Brianna's eyes widened slightly, but she understood. She slipped her phone into her pocket and moved toward the hallway, pretending to look for fresh towels. Samuel noticed her leave. So did Marcus. So did Ariel. The race for the truth had already begun. But Ariel had no choice. She could not chase Brianna. She could not protect the evidence herself. If she left the kitchen, they would say she abandoned the exam. If she stayed, the only proof that could save her might disappear. Chef Roland finally turned back to Ariel. "Fine," he said coldly. 15 minutes. No extra ingredients. No assistance. No second chance after this." Principal Voss added, "And if you fail, the disciplinary review continues." Dylan smiled again. He thought 15 minutes was not a chance. He thought it was humiliation with a timer. Ariel walked back to her station. What remained there looked almost useless. Scraps of herbs, a small piece of fish from a backup tray, half a lemon, a few vegetables, butter, a small amount of stock, and potatoes that had gone cold at the edges. Students leaned forward. Someone whispered, "There's no way." Ariel tied her apron tighter. Her hands stopped shaking. Her face became still. For the first time all morning, she looked less like a student under attack and more like a chef stepping into battle. She looked at the countdown clock. 15 minutes. Then she said quietly, but clearly enough for the nearest students to hear, 15 minutes is enough. The first strike of her knife hit the cutting board, and in that instant, the entire kitchen realized they were about to witness something that did not belong to student-level cooking. The moment Ariel Carter's knife touched the cutting board, the laughter in the kitchen began to weaken. At first, Dylan still looked amused. So did Marcus. A few students watched with folded arms, waiting for Ariel to embarrass herself. 15 minutes was nothing in a final culinary exam. It was barely enough time to warm a pan, much less create a complete dish worthy of Westbridge's judges. But Ariel did not move like someone chasing time. She moved like someone controlling it. Her eyes swept across the scraps left on her station, a small piece of fish, crushed nuts from a garnished tray, half a lemon, a few tired vegetables, cold potatoes, butter, stock, and herbs that had survived the earlier chaos. To most students, it looked like leftovers. To Ariel, it looked like possibility. She broke down the fish first, trimming it cleanly with quick, exact cuts. Then she pressed the nut crumbs into the surface with a touch so light they clung without crushing the flesh. Her pan hit the flame. Butter melted. A thin ribbon of smoke rose. She waited half a second, then placed the fish down. The sound was sharp. Perfect. A few students leaned closer. Ariel moved to the vegetables next, cutting away the damaged edges and tossing the remaining pieces into a hot pan. She did not try to hide their imperfections. She used them. She let the edges char just enough to create bitterness, then balanced it with lemon and butter. The smell changed from ordinary to rich in seconds. Marcus's smile faded. Dylan shifted his weight. She's just throwing things together. He muttered, but no one answered him. The kitchen had gone too quiet. Ariel poured the small amount of stock into a saucepan and reduced it hard. Faster than most students would dare. She added herbs, a touch of lemon, and a piece of butter. At the exact moment the liquid began to tighten, it became a smoky lemon butter sauce. Glossy and controlled. Strong enough to carry the entire plate. One student whispered, "That's not student technique." Another answered, "That looks like competition cooking." Chef Roland Pierce heard them. He had been watching from a distance, trying to maintain the appearance of indifference. But with every movement Ariel made, his face became harder to control. He had seen this rhythm before, not in his own classroom, not from any Westbridge student. Years ago, on a national broadcast, a young unknown girl had stunned a panel of judges by building a complete dish from damaged ingredients after her station malfunctioned. She had not cried. She had not complained. She had simply cooked faster, cleaner, and smarter than everyone else. The audience had called it a miracle. Professional chefs had called it instinct. Chef Roland remembered one thing most clearly: the way that girl turned disaster into technique. Now Ariel Carter was doing the same thing in front of him. His throat tightened. "No," he whispered. Dylan heard the whisper and turned. What Chef Roland did not answer. Ariel was plating now. Not frantically, not desperately. She dragged a smooth line of potato across the plate, placed the fish at an angle, tucked the charred vegetables beside it, and spooned the smoky lemon butter sauce around the edges. Every detail looked intentional. Every mark had purpose. The dish looked nothing like a rescue attempt. It looked designed. Dylan's face flushed with panic. He could not dump the plate now. Too many people were watching. Too many eyes had shifted from suspicion to awe. If he touched her station again, even Chef Roland would not be able to protect him. Across the room, Brianna slipped quietly toward the back hallway, her phone hidden in her sleeve. Samuel Reed noticed her movement immediately. He set down the tray he had been holding and followed several steps behind, careful not to draw attention. Marcus saw Samuel leave and cursed under his breath. The fight had split in two. In the kitchen, Ariel was saving her exam with scraps. Behind the kitchen, Brianna was hunting for the only proof that could save her future. Chef Roland took one slow step closer to Ariel's plate. His eyes moved from the fish to the sauce, then to her steady hands. The memory from years ago struck him with full force. He knew that technique. He knew that calm. He knew that impossible recovery. His face went pale. "No," he murmured again, barely loud enough to hear. "It can't be the girl from that championship." But while Roland was beginning to recognize who Ariel really was, the darker battle was already moving into the camera room behind the kitchen. The old camera storage room behind the kitchen was almost completely dark. Only one fluorescent light flickered above the doorway, buzzing softly as Brianna Cole hurried inside with Marcus close behind her. The room smelled of dust, warm cable, and old metal shelves. A small monitor sat on a narrow desk, connected to a system most students did not even know existed. A young technician looked up from the chair, startled. "Can I help you?" he asked. Brianna stepped forward first, forcing confidence into her voice. "Principal Voss needs the footage from the kitchen sink camera deleted," she said. "There was a system error during the exam." The technician frowned. "Deleted. I didn't get any request." Marcus moved closer, blocking the doorway with his broad shoulders. "Then you're getting it now." The technician's hand hovered near the keyboard. "I can't just erase exam footage without written approval." Brianna leaned over the desk and lowered her voice. "You don't understand. If that corrupted footage gets reviewed, the whole exam could be invalidated." Principal Voss said, "Handle it quietly." The technician still hesitated. Marcus slammed one hand against the metal shelf beside him. The sound cracked through the small room. "Do you want to be the reason this school loses donor money?" he snapped. Do you want your job reviewed next? The technician swallowed. His fingers moved toward the mouse. Then a voice cut through the doorway. Step away from that computer. Everyone turned. Samuel Reed stood at the entrance, breathing hard from following them down the corridor. He looked older under the flickering light, but his voice carried the weight of someone who had worked in kitchens long enough to know when a lie was being cooked. Brianna's face tightened. This doesn't concern you. It concerns the student whose exam was destroyed, Samuel said. Marcus took a step toward him. Old man, walk away. Samuel did not move. Before the confrontation could go further, Principal Margaret Voss appeared behind him. Her expression was controlled, but her eyes went directly to the monitor. That single glance told Samuel everything. She knew what the footage might show. Mr. Reed, Voss said coldly. You are interfering with an administrative matter. Samuel turned to her. Deleting evidence is not administration. Brianna quickly said, no one is deleting anything. We were told there was a technical issue. Voss raised one hand, silencing her. For a moment, the room froze. Then Voss spoke to the technician. Lock the system. The technician blinked. Principal, no one accesses this footage until the review board determines whether it is relevant. Samuel let out a bitter laugh. That's a delay. That is procedure. Voss replied, no. Samuel said, that is protection. Voss's face hardened. You should be very careful. Samuel looked at the monitor, then back at her. I am being careful. That's why I made sure years ago that this camera didn't save only to the school network. The color drained slightly from Voss's face. Brianna turned sharply toward him. What does that mean? Samuel's eyes stayed on the principal. It means the sync camera backs up automatically to a separate drive in the old prep office. Locked cabinet. Independent storage. Safety protocol after the grease fire. The silence that followed was instant and heavy. Marcus cursed under his breath. Voss's polished composure cracked for half a second. Brianna did not wait for orders. She spun toward the door and ran. Samuel tried to move after her, but Marcus blocked him long enough to slow him down. The evidence existed, but now everyone knew it, and that made it more dangerous than ever. Samuel looked at Principal Voss, his voice low and steady. You can lock this room, but you cannot lock the truth forever. While the hunt for the original footage exploded behind the kitchen, Ariel Carter set her final plate down in front of the judges. Her future now stood one taste away from survival. Ariel Carter placed the final plate on the judge's table with both hands steady. For a moment, no one spoke. The dish looked nothing like something made from scraps in 15 minutes. The fish was crisp along the edges, resting beside charred vegetables and a smooth line of potato. The smoky lemon butter sauce caught the light in a clean, glossy curve around the plate. Dylan stared at it with a tight jaw. Chef Roland Pierce stood nearby, pretending to study his clipboard, but his eyes kept returning to Ariel's hands. Principal Voss had come back from the hallway, her face composed again, though a trace of tension remained in her mouth. Samuel Reed entered a few seconds later, breathing hard, his gaze searching the room, as if counting enemies. Then the main kitchen doors opened. A woman in a dark chef coat stepped inside. The room changed instantly. Even Chef Roland straightened. Principal Voss turned, surprised. Chef Cross, Chef Helena Cross, walked toward the judging table with calm authority. She was not one of Westbridge's regular instructors. Everyone in the room knew her name. She was the special head judge from the National Culinary Association. A chef whose approval could launch a student's career and whose criticism could end one. I apologize for arriving late. Helena said, I wanted to observe the final stages without announcement. Dylan's confidence returned the moment he heard that. His family had donated heavily to Westbridge's culinary programs. He assumed every important adult in the building understood which students mattered. He stepped forward with a polished smile. Chef Cross, I'm Dylan Whitmore. My family, Helena, raised a hand, stopping him without even looking. Her eyes were fixed on Ariel. The entire kitchen noticed. Helena took one slow step closer. "What is your full name?" she asked. Ariel's throat tightened. Ariel Carter. Helena's expression shifted. Not shock exactly. Recognition. Then she asked the question Ariel had spent years avoiding. Donovan Carter's daughter. A wave of whispers broke through the kitchen. Dylan's smile disappeared. Chef Roland's face went pale. Principal Voss moved quickly. Chef Cross. With respect. A student's family background is not relevant to this exam. Helena did not take her eyes off Ariel. "No," she said. But the truth is, Ariel stood frozen. Helena turned slightly. Addressing the room, years ago, a 14-year-old girl won the National Young Master Chef title after recovering from a station failure that would have broken most trained cooks. She showed technique, discipline, and composure far beyond her age. The whispers grew louder. That girl, Helena continued, competed under her mother's last name. Then she disappeared from the public culinary world after her family was dragged into a professional scandal. Ariel looked down. Dylan looked as if the floor had shifted beneath him. "Marcus," near the back, muttered it. "No way." Chef Roland said nothing. His silence was its own confession. Principal Voss forced a sharp smile. "Again, Chef Cross. That is interesting. History. But it does not change the disciplinary concerns we are currently handling." Helena finally turned toward her. "You're right. A student's hidden identity does not decide an exam." Voss seemed relieved. Then Helena's voice sharpened. "But sabotaging a student's dish does. So does using edited footage to accuse her. And so does protecting a donor's son while threatening a scholarship student." The kitchen went silent. Dylan's face drained of color. Ariel slowly lifted her eyes. For the first time all day, someone with power had said the thing everyone else was too afraid to say. Helena looked directly at Dylan. "Now," she said, "I want to see the original video." The words hit Dylan harder than any accusation, because in that moment, he understood the joke was over. His bullying was about to become a trial in the middle of the kitchen. The atmosphere inside the competition kitchen had completely changed. Only minutes earlier, Dylan Whitmore had stood confidently among the students, protected by his reputation, his family name, and the people willing to look the other way. Now, every eye in the room was fixed on the small black hard drive resting on the judge's table. It had appeared almost by accident. Brianna Cole had managed to reach the old prep office before anyone else. She had found the backup drive hidden inside a locked cabinet and slipped it into her bag. For a few precious minutes, she thought she had won. Then Samuel Reed spotted her rushing through the hallway. He followed immediately. When Samuel called her name, Brianna panicked. She turned too quickly. Her bag struck the corner of a metal cart, and the hard drive slipped free. It hit the floor with a sharp crack and rolled straight into the open kitchen corridor. Half a dozen students saw it. So did Chef Helena Cross. "What is that?" Helena asked. No one answered. Samuel bent down, picked up the drive, and placed it in front of her. The original backup footage. The silence that followed was deafening. Helena looked toward the technician station near the demonstration screen. "Play it." Principal Voss stepped forward immediately. "I don't think that's necessary until play it." Helena repeated. This time, it wasn't a request. Within moments, the footage appeared on the large screen hanging above the competition floor. Every student looked up. Every instructor stopped moving. And the truth finally arrived. The video showed everything. Dylan walking toward Ariel's station. Dylan reaching for the pot. Dylan lifting it deliberately. Dylan dumping the entire dish into the sink. Marcus positioning himself to block part of the view from nearby students. Brianna standing several feet away, filming from a different angle before later editing the footage. There was no confusion, no misunderstanding, no accident. The entire kitchen watched in complete silence. Ariel did not move. She simply stood there and let the truth speak for itself. Dylan's face lost all color. Marcus stared at the floor. Brianna looked as though she wanted the ground to open beneath her feet. When the footage ended, nobody applauded. Nobody whispered. The silence was far worse. Finally, Dylan cleared his throat. "It was a joke," he said weakly. No one reacted. It was supposed to be a joke. Chef Helena slowly turned toward him. "A joke," Dylan swallowed. "Yes." Helena's eyes hardened. "What kind of joke destroys someone's final exam?" Dylan said nothing. "What kind of joke attacks someone's reputation?" Still nothing. "What kind of joke threatens someone's scholarship and future?" The question hung in the air. Dylan lowered his head. For the first time all day, he had no answer. Principal Voss attempted to regain control. "This situation is clearly unfortunate. But perhaps we should discuss disciplinary actions privately," Samuel interrupted her. "No." Everyone turned toward him. Samuel pointed at the screen. "Tell him about the cameras." Voss's expression tightened. Samuel continued. "Tell them you ordered the system locked before anyone could access the footage." A shocked murmur spread through the students. Several looked directly at Principal Voss. The problem was no longer Dylan. The problem was the entire system that had protected him. The favoritism, the threats, the attempt to bury evidence. One lie after another. And standing in the middle of it all was Ariel Carter. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult anyone. She didn't demand revenge. She simply stood there while the truth dismantled every lie built against her. Across the room, Dylan looked smaller than he had ever looked before. The arrogance was gone. The confidence was gone. For the first time, he understood what it felt like to be powerless. Chef Helena Cross let the silence settle before turning toward Ariel. Her expression softened. "Young lady," she said, "we are about to judge your dish." Ariel met her gaze. Helena nodded. "Not because we feel sorry for you." The entire room listened. "But because you earned that right." Ariel took a slow breath. The truth had saved her reputation. But something even bigger was about to happen. Because the most shocking part of this day was not the video everyone had just witnessed. It was the extraordinary meal Ariel had created from disaster in only 15 minutes. The plate sat at the center of the judge's table like a quiet answer to everything Dylan had tried to destroy. No one in the kitchen moved as Chef Helena Cross picked up her fork. Beside her, Chef Roland Pierce looked trapped between professional duty and personal panic. Principal Voss stood near the edge of the room, her face stiff, while Samuel Reed watched from the back with his arms folded. The students crowded around the stations, waiting for the taste that would decide whether Ariel Carter had truly survived the impossible. Helena cut into the fish first. The crust cracked lightly beneath the fork. Steam rose from the center. She dragged a small piece through the smoky lemon butter sauce, added a bit of charred vegetable, and tasted it. Then she said nothing. Chef Roland tasted next. His face gave away nothing at first, but his hands slowed before he set the fork down. Another judge took a bite. Still silence. Dylan saw the pause and forced a smile back onto his face. For one desperate second, he believed the silence meant failure. Maybe the fish was overcooked. Maybe the sauce was too sharp. Maybe 15 minutes had not been enough after all. He let out a small laugh, just loud enough for nearby students to hear. "I told you." He muttered, "Scraps are still scraps." Then Helena placed her fork down. Slowly, deliberately, she stood. Dylan's smile disappeared. "This dish," Helena said, her voice carrying across the kitchen, "should not exist." No one breathed. With the time given, the ingredients available, and the pressure placed on her, most trained adults would have produced something careless. unfinished, or defensive. She looked at the plate again. But this is none of those things. Ariel stood still. Her hands at her sides, Helena continued. The fish is controlled. The sauce is bold without being heavy. The vegetables use bitterness intelligently instead of hiding it. The plate tells a story of damage, recovery, and discipline. A murmur moved through the students. This is not just a good dish. Elena said, this is proof of composure under extreme pressure. That is what separates Daddy from a chef. Chef Roland looked down at his clipboard. He knew what he had to say. His voice came out lower than usual. Based on scoring criteria, he admitted, Ariel Carter has the highest practical score of the exam. The kitchen erupted into whispers. Dylan stepped forward immediately. That's not fair. Helena turned toward him. Dylan pointed at Ariel. She's not a normal student. You said it yourself. She competed nationally. She had an advantage. Ariel's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent. Helena's expression did not change. Talent is not cheating. Mr. Whitmore. Dylan opened his mouth. Helena cut him off. But sabotage is... The room went silent again. And so is coordinated deception. So is edited evidence. So is threatening a scholarship student into signing a false statement. Principal Voss stiffened. Helena looked toward Chef Roland. Until the review board completes its investigation, Dylan Whitmore is suspended from this examination and all academy competitions. Brianna Cole and Marcus Vale will appear before the disciplinary committee for evidence tampering and false statements. Marcus cursed under his breath. Brianna looked like she might cry now that no camera could save her. Elena's gaze moved to Principal Voss. And Principal Voss, you will remove yourself from this exam floor immediately. Your handling of this matter will be reported to the association and the academy board. For the first time all day, Voss had no polished answer. Ariel watched the powerful people who had cornered her begin to lose control one by one. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply breathed, as if her lungs had finally been returned to her. Samuel lowered his head slightly. Proud, but quiet. The students looked at Ariel differently now. Not with pity, not with suspicion. With respect. Everyone thought the story had reached its end. Then Helena turned back to the room. Her voice calm but heavy with another truth. There is still one more thing this academy needs to hear about the Carter family. Arielle Fros. The name she had spent years avoiding returned like a shadow across the kitchen. Donovan Carter, her father. And just when her own name had been cleared, the past she feared most stepped back into the room. 3 days later, the Grand Assembly Hall of Westbridge Culinary Academy was filled to capacity. Students packed every row. Instructors stood along the walls. Representatives from the National Culinary Association occupied the front section. The atmosphere felt nothing like an ordinary award ceremony. It felt like a verdict. At the center of the stage stood Chef Helena Cross. Beside her sat members of the review board. Stacks of reports and investigation files spread across the long table. The events of the final exam had already become the most talked about scandal in the Academy's history. Ariel Carter sat quietly in the front row. Across the aisle sat Dylan Whitmore, Brianna Cole, and Marcus Vale. For the first time since anyone could remember, none of them looked confident. Then the doors at the back of the hall opened. Victoria Whitmore entered. The room immediately grew quieter. As one of the Academy's largest donors, she carried influence that stretched far beyond Westbridge. She walked toward the front with the certainty of someone accustomed to getting her way. This entire process has gone too far, she announced before Helena could begin. If my son is punished based on a misunderstanding, the Whitmore family will seriously reconsider its financial support of this institution. A murmur spread through the crowd. The threat was obvious. Money, power, influence. The same tools that had protected Dylan from consequences his entire life. But Helena Cross did not even flinch. Mrs. Whitmore. she replied calmly. Before arriving today, I submitted the complete investigation file to the National Culinary Association. She lifted a folder from the table, along with evidence tampering, witness statements, video footage, and administrative misconduct reports. Victoria's expression changed. For the first time, her threat had failed. Then another sound echoed through the hall. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Confident. Everyone turned toward the entrance. A tall man walked inside. The reaction was immediate. Several older instructors stood up. A few chefs in the audience exchanged shocked glances. Even Chef Roland Pierce looked stunned. Ariel slowly rose from her chair. Dad, Donovan Carter had arrived. For years, his name had existed only in rumors, old culinary magazines, and whispered conversations. Once considered one of the greatest chefs of his generation, he had disappeared after a scandal destroyed his reputation. Now he stood in front of the entire academy. Helena looked toward him. Many people remember the accusation that ended Chef Carter's career. She said, "What most people don't know is that the evidence behind that scandal was later found to be manipulated." The hall erupted into whispers. Helena opened another file. The investigation revealed that members connected to the Whitmore restaurant group benefited directly from Donovan Carter's removal from a national competition years ago. Victoria Whitmore's face went pale. Dylan stared at his mother in disbelief. The room suddenly understood the terrible pattern. Years earlier, someone had tried to destroy Donovan Carter's career through deception. Now, Dylan had attempted to destroy Ariel's future using almost the exact same method. The bullying had never been just about school. It was history repeating itself. On the B1, the final decisions were announced. Dylan Whitmore was suspended and banned from all national-level culinary competitions for the year. Brianna Cole lost her position in the Academy's media program. Marcus Vale was suspended pending disciplinary review. Chef Roland Pierce became the subject of an ethics investigation. Principal Margaret Voss was removed from active duties while the board completed its inquiry. Then Helena smiled toward Ariel. With the highest examination score in Westbridge Culinary Academy, she announced, Ariel Carter will represent this institution at the National Culinary Championship. The hall exploded into applause. Ariel walked onto the stage. Helena placed the honorary chef jacket over her shoulders. For a moment, Ariel looked toward her father. Donovan nodded proudly. Years of silence passed between them in that single glance. As she stepped away from the stage, she passed Dylan. He couldn't meet her eyes. Ariel paused briefly beside him. Her voice was quiet. "You could throw my food into the trash," she said, "but you could never bury something that was built through a lifetime of hard work." Dylan lowered his head. He had no answer. As Ariel turned back toward the cheering crowd, every student in the hall rose to their feet. The applause seemed endless. And when she finally walked out of Westbridge Academy, she was no longer the scholarship girl people mocked and underestimated. She was the national master chef they had tried and failed to erase, and her story left behind a question that every person who had ever been underestimated should remember. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one with the power to make the entire room stand up. What started as a cruel attempt to humiliate a black scholarship student ended with the truth exposing everyone who thought power, money, and lies could erase real talent. Ariel Carter didn't win because someone felt sorry for her. She won because no amount of sabotage could destroy the skill, discipline, and determination she spent years building. In the end, the people who laughed the loudest were forced to watch her stand at the top, while their own actions brought them down. Now we'd love to hear from you. If you had been one of the students in that kitchen, would you have spoken up when Ariel was being treated unfairly? Or would you have stayed silent? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of justice, courage, and unexpected comebacks. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.